following year, Serena has gone to Yale, but Blair wants to avoid Serena, so she goes to Oxford to study for the semester. And Nate is back at Deep Springs, where he actually wants to meet Jenny. Jenny is at a university pretty much next door to it, and they start a thing. So we get Nate and Jenny again. I mean, I know she's a little bit older, but I find it still creepy that she dated him when she was way too young, and now she's like obsessed with him again after he broke her heart. Serena and Dan are also a serious couple now as well. They've gotten back together, and they go to pick Jenny up, and surprise, surprise, Nate's there. So they also let Nate in. Serena lets Nate in, even though again Nate broke her heart, and she's like acting like nothing happened. And Dan's pissed off with Nate. He doesn't want Jenny to be with him and all of that. So he doesn't want them to be in the same car, but they have to. And there's also a blizzard happening. There is a snow blizzard. They end up having to like stop, and Serena remembers that Blair has a home nearby that she can crash because she knows the code and stuff. Guess who's there? Blair, her serious boyfriend Chuck, and Blair's dad and his partner Giles. They're all at this home. So Serena, Nate, Dan, and Jenny knock on the door, and lo and behold, they're all together again. Blair's pissed off. She doesn't want anything to do with it, but she can't do anything because there is a blizzard, and they are forced to stay in this one place together. Talk about drama, but also the conveniences still. The conveniences are still happening. So Nina's given the attic to sleep in. Dan and Serena have their own room. Blair and Chuck have their room, and while Nate is upstairs in the attic and stuff, Jenny goes up and kisses him, and that's like their first kiss since like getting back together kind of thing. Blair, even though she's in a serious relationship with Chuck, and Chuck is honestly so kind and caring, it's such a 180. But Blair's fantasizing about Nate. What was she doing fantasizing about Nate when she had Chuck? Chuck, who made her feel like a princess and never ever fucked with her, just down hole. It was infuriating. Yeah, it's infuriating for me as well. Blair, stop thinking about Nate. Not just that, Serena's also like feeling things for Nate again, even though she's in a serious relationship with Dan, and she's fantasizing about it. So one night, Serena and Blair and Jenny all have the idea that they're gonna sneak up into Nate's bedroom, into the attic, and hopefully sleep with him. And again, like, even though Serena and Blair are in serious relationships, I'm just like, you're nasty. However, Blair does bump into Serena as she's about to go up to the attic, so they kind of stop one another, allowing Jenny to go up, and Jenny then has sex with Nate. So Nate takes Jenny's virginity. So this is 3 of the main characters that Nate has taken their virginity. He's taken Serena's, Blair's, and now Jenny's. It's weird as well because Blair and Serena make up, like they become best friends again, which again comes out of nowhere, but they're just like having fun, reminiscing about things again, which makes Dan feel left out because Dan doesn't really feel like he is part of that sort of friendship. So he goes into the other room and he starts texting Vanessa. Vanessa of all people, the person who cheated on him, had sex with someone else in his bed, and he starts texting her, and they're texting non-stop. Hollis, who has been away to Iceland to film, comes back to Vanessa, and he says that they've been texting a lot as well, and Vanessa's just like, oh, it's fine, it's nothing. Hollis and Vanessa do end up breaking up. He thinks that she's in love with Dan, which she is. She was with him and cheated on him, though. Anyway, like, I am holding on to Chuck right now because, again, he's the only person who is actually treating his partner with respect. Think back to the fact that everyone thought Chuck would be the biggest cheater when I put on that Instagram story. Chuck came first in that poll. He hasn't cheated on anyone. I mean, granted, he hasn't really been in a relationship this entire book series, so he actually hasn't been able to cheat on anyone. When he's in this relationship with Blair, he treats it seriously. He gives her an anniversary present. I remember how sad you were around this time last year. This year, I want you to be happy. Like, he genuinely wants Blair to be happy. He loves her. He thinks the world of her. And yet she still wanted to cheat on him with Nate. She doesn't deserve Chuck, and I never thought I would say that. They're all playing Clue, and Blair is pissed off with Serena for wanting to say Nate, even though she should just get the fuck over it. She's with Chuck. And they're playing Clue. I suspect Miss Banter would sit outside Nate's room with a really slutty candlestick, and it brings things out. So it comes out that Serena was going to sneak into Nate's room, which kind of ruffles Dan's feathers. And also Serena does say, well, Blair, you were going to do the same thing. So both of them admit that they were going to sleep with Nate. Both of them admit it. Meanwhile, Nate is like, oh, you guys are fighting over me again. I'm sick of this. And then he ends up leaving, and he takes Jenny with him to go on a boat. But this does show you how amazing Chuck is, because when Blair and Chuck have a conversation, she says, I'm so sorry, which honestly, she actually said sorry. She said the S word. She says, whenever he and Serena are around, I act like the person who I don't like, but I'm in love with you. I know that. And he says, I love you too. And I know you. Oh, Chuck. Like, honestly,
thank you.
My heart. And remember, he did have his whole gay section of the series, which totally fizzled out, just went nowhere.
I like your username. That's funny.
At the same time, Serena and Dan are talking, and Dan forgives Serena too. She says, he was my first love, and that's hard to get over. But then she tells Dan, I love you, which makes Dan laugh. He says, if we got through this weekend, we can get through anything. Leading to Dan and Serena getting back to Dan's apartment, because now the blizzard's all clear. Everyone can leave now. Everyone can leave now, which is so convenient, isn't it? So yeah, they get back to Dan's apartment where Vanessa is, even though she was kicked out, because Rufus says that he can live there. So now we get into the fourth and final part of this book, where everything just goes to shit, right? This is the last of Gossip Girl, right? We do still have the serial killer rewriting of the first book, but this is how we end the characters, right? This is how
does
the
Kakashi wear
ends,
gloves?
right? So this is part 4.
I'm trying to remember.
Furious. So firstly,
I haven't seen the original
series
series in fucking
serious
years.
couple. They are totally in love.
He has fingerless gloves.
Serena wants to uproot her entire life for Dan because he's going to
Emo.
Iowa and
He has fingerless gloves.
She's bought an apartment that she and Dan can live in without telling Dan. At the same time, Dan and Vanessa are talking again, and they're talking about Hollis's movie. Even though Vanessa and Hollis are broken up now, Dan cheats on Serena. As if they would follow in the steps to a dance only they knew, they stood without breaking their kiss. Vanessa took Dan's hand and led him to her bed. So yeah, Dan and Serena are supposed to be together. And now Dan has just slept with Vanessa, who cheated on him. And again, Vanessa hasn't even apologized for doing that. Can you say now why I did a cheating count there? Because that's all these people ever fucking do. And it's quite heartbreaking for Serena because in the next chapter, they meet up in a place where Dan loves, but Serena's never liked, but she just went there anyway because it's Dan's favourite place, so she's going to like it too. And she shows him the apartment in Iowa that she got, and he's like, I need to go and do this by myself. And so, effectively, he breaks up with her, but still without telling her that he cheated on her with Vanessa. And Serena says, you can still keep the house, I paid the first few months, it was your Christmas present. And Dan is like, I still don't want it, and leaves her. How awful is that? So Dan, who is what endgame for Serena in the TV show, has just cheated on her with the person who cheated on him, Vanessa. Dan and Vanessa are together right now. Serena and Dan are over.
Oh, thank you.
That, well, because Dan and Vanessa are going off on their own little adventures for 2 years, they say, oh, wait for me, and then after 2 years we will be together. So like they're not even like really together right now, and with them being away from each other for 2 years, you just know they're going to cheat on each other multiple times. And then even when they're together after 2 years, they're going to cheat on each other still. It's just a constant cheating cycle. Jenny and Nate are together, but they are so weird. They do a lot of cat noises with one another. So they're having like a dinner party with other people, and Blair and Serena are there too. Jenny is like going meow meow, and Nate's also going like meow meow, and like they're acting like cats in front of everyone. I'm genuinely mortified. Literally, a server asks Nate if he wants some wine, and he replies meow meow and picks up Jenny's glass. I'm scared again. This isn't even the horror book. The next book's the horror book, but I'm genuinely terrified right now. Jenny was sitting on his lap as well, but they had to move her to a different chair. And he shouts down there at the table, you holding up meow? And she says meow. She replies meow. She purred goofily, not caring who heard her. She should fucking care. He takes Jenny to see the Nutcracker, that's the tradition, but all he can think about is Blair. All he can think about during this entire thing is Blair. Even though Jenny's his girlfriend, he can't stop thinking about Blair. Jenny then leaves Nate for Tyler, who is Blair's brother, and that's because Nate's been boring, he just wants to stay in all the time, and Jenny wants to like go out and party, so she leaves him. They kind of break up. Blair and Serena break into Nate's house, and they take off their clothes and sleep in the same bed with him as a prank. As a prank. After everything they've done together, they just do it as a prank. They do that. They actually do that, and they're both... Well, actually, I think at this point, Serena's not with Dan anymore. Blair's with Chuck. But you know what really infuriates me is the fact that we finally have a healthy couple with Blair and Chuck. And this is the final Gossip Girl book. Chuck wants Blair to move in with him. He wants to plan their summer together. And she says, I can't do this. It was the fact that deep down, she wasn't sure if she wanted to be in a relationship. At least not right now. Not with someone who was so ready to settle down. So Chuck just wants to spend more time with her. Like, again, this is the thing with these characters. They think that everything has to happen right there and then. And it doesn't have to be endgame right now, just like be in a relationship right now. But she doesn't want to settle down, and he says, I understand. Even though he's so upset. Like, he is genuinely devastated that she is breaking up with him. They've broken up now. Serena and Dan aren't together anymore. They've broken up. Chuck and Blair are not together anymore. They've broken up. Nate and Jenny are broken up too. Everyone's broken up. So at Chuck's New Year's Eve party, because it's like the final New Year's Eve, and Serena and Nate are together, and then Blair sees them, so she comes over. She's like, what are you doing? Serena says, I was thinking we could go on an adventure. Blair is absolutely furious. She's like, seriously? Again? And she assumes that she means a romantic adventure with Nate. But then Serena says, would you just shut up for 1 second? I meant an adventure with you, Blair. I want to travel with you. You're my best friend. And then Nate's like, I can come. And then Serena's like, sorry, the invitation was for Blair. Blair says, no boys, you ready, Serena? Good luck, Nate. We love you. They chose each other. I love the fact that we rectified the end of book 11 where Nate decided to ditch both Blair and Serena and chose himself.
Thank you.
This one we have the opposite where Blair and Serena choose each other and go off into the sunset together. Like, that is a great ending than book 11 was. But like, everyone's broken up. Blair and Serena, they haven't been honest with each other. The amount of times that they've cheated with their partners and stuff and hate one another, none of that's been resolved. So again, like, the friendship is still toxic, but because I've been battered and bruised by this entire series and everyone's pretty much made really bad decisions, I'm kind of left feeling, well, this is the ending I've got. It's the only kind of positive outcome, I guess. I don't know how I feel. I don't know how I feel about this. The final Gossip Girl blog post, who am I and will I ever reveal myself? That's a question I could answer, but I'm not going to. So if you're waiting this entire time to find out who Gossip Girl was, I'm sorry to say, but we never ever find out. And that is because it's physically impossible for anybody to be Gossip Girl. Not a single one person could actually know every single thing that happened in this. I know people do submit things to Gossip Girl for like the whole rumor mill, but it's genuinely physically impossible for Gossip Girl to be anyone. There is no way it could have been anyone. The way this is written, there's no chance. Not unless it went into sci-fi fantasy territory. And especially since a lot of times the blog posts and things are pulled straight from the thoughts and feelings of the characters. There is no Gossip Girl reveal. I am so sorry. It is not Dan Humphrey. It's just not ever revealed because it's impossible for it to be anyone. I'm sorry. The last book, the book that probably nobody heard about, the slasher remake of the very first book, written by the original author Cecily Bonzagesa. She left the series and she came back for this one. And I know why. And I want to tell you it right now. I alluded to this earlier of why I have a theory she came back for this. It's because she copy and pasted her own manuscript from the first book, threw in some like horror references and like little kind of sinister thoughts from like Gossip Girl and stuff, and even added a death scene, well, quite a few death scenes, very gruesome death scenes, but she didn't bother to change the entire manuscript for it. So we would have a really big gruesome death scene, and then the scene would continue just as it happened in the first book, as if nothing happened. That is why Cecily came back for this book, because she could get away with copy and pasting the first book and just adding little bits in here and there. So I'm just going to get through the entire book for you. I'm going to do a kill count as well for Blair, Serena, Dan and Jenny, because they're the only people who really like kill anyone. So it's honestly so bizarre. It is honestly a really weird book, and I had high hopes for it too, because I was like, oh, you know what, I've read 13 books where I hate all the characters. Maybe I might get some of my anger and frustration out. Maybe I will say these characters like get killed and stuff. Like, that would be amazing. And like say like Nate and Dan, oh my gosh, I would love it if they died and stuff. You know what I mean? It isn't exactly what I was hoping for. It is about 100 pages more than the first book. And I mean, there are like some changes. Of course, there's like quite a few changes as well, but the majority of it is pretty much the same. So for example, we have like Welcome to New York's Upper East Side, where my friends and I live and go to school and play and sometimes kill each other. Whereas in the first book, it's Welcome to New York City's Upper East Side, where my friends and I live and go to school and play and sleep, sometimes with each other. So we are getting like these little twists in the narrative. And I don't want to go through like the entire story the way that it does in the first book, because it's essentially just the story of the first book. We have Serena, she's gone off to boarding school. We have Blair and the fact that she doesn't like Cyrus, her mum's boyfriend. In her mind, she's like plotting his murder and stuff. Other than just like those slight changes, the story itself, everything that happens in the first book, happens in this one. I mean, there is a big difference actually, because when Serena comes back, the first thing she does is breaks into Nate's bedroom and she injects poison into one of his socks that has his stash of weed in it. She just wants her and Blair to be friends, and their friendship wasn't supposed to die not ever. All she thought about all year was how to repair their friendship. Eventually it became clear how much easier things would be if Nate were out of the picture, literally. And I was like, yes, finally we are rectifying I mean, I know murder's wrong and stuff, but like, this is fiction, it's fine. Finally we are rectifying all of the wrongs of the original series when Nate like did so many fucked up shit to them both, you know, and he did come between them. They also treat each other like shit, don't get me wrong, but like, Nate is a constant paid my loss. So before this, we find out that Serena's actually killed 3 people when she went to boarding school. There was Jude, sweet Jude, but Jude simply wasn't Nate. So Serena had rammed the stick down Jude's throat, catching his tongue and epiglottis in the little metal basket meant for catching apples and killing him instantly. There was also Milos. Milos was still missing, his shark-eaten body floating to and fro in the icy waters between Cape Cod and the Bay of Fundy in Canada. And then the third person she's killed is called Soren. Had built her a snowman. The bloody snowman was wearing Soren's head. So she has killed 3 people quite gruesomely, I might add, before we even have the story start. As she's leaving, she gets in a cab. She bumps into Jeremy, who is one of Nate's friends, and he's come to get the pot that she is literally just injected in poison. So then we have Serena go to Blair's, Blair and Nate are about to have sex for the first time, blah blah blah. Serena is there, she comes back, and they have the exact same conversations. Seriously, conversations have just been copy and pasted again, which to begin with is fine, because I understand this is just retelling the first book. But then we have the huge difference that Jeremy, okay, with Serena there, with Serena at the party, Jeremy comes back after being at Nate's to get these socks, this pot, and then he's trying to say Serena. Jeremy is choking and he's trying to say Serena. He yanked a pair of neon yellow Adidas socks from out of his pocket and tossed them on the carpet. So there's the murder weapon right there. And then he falls down, and Serena is now grateful that it's him who's died and not Nate, because she's just changed her mind. She doesn't want Nate to die now. Jeremy's eyes bulged impossibly. Finally, they exploded. Pop, pop. Blood spattered the walls and the furniture. Jeremy collapsed in a blood-soaked heap on the floor. And then his dad says, son, are we going to have to send you up to Little Silver again? And then Jeremy's mother says, he can't hear you, dear. He's out. So his eyeballs have just popped. There's blood all over the walls. Their son has just died in front of them, and they're just like, he's fine. But what's weird as well is that all of the other guests are just continuing to do what they were doing. They continue to have the food that they're eating, they continue chatting, there's blood everywhere. And then we get the whole copy and paste again of like all the conversations that happened in the first book. I'm just like, okay, so we just had this big death scene, and then everything's just back to normal? This is when the story should have changed, right? Because then Serena confesses to Blair, I killed Jeremy because I was going to kill Nate, but I changed my mind now. And so even from that moment on, things should have been different, right? But no, nothing really changes. Everything still happens the way it happens in the first book. And I'm just like, how does somebody die so graphically and brutally in front of everyone at this party, and everyone just goes about their business still? It doesn't make sense. I mean, the whole series doesn't make sense as it is, but like, what? Serena is confronted by Jude's sister. And again, this is just like where all sense of reality just like escapes my body, because let me tell you. Serena's in the elevator at her apartment, and a girl comes in and she says, I know what you did. Up at Hanover, you killed him, my brother Jude. I saw from the window. I was visiting. Okay, why didn't you say this to the police, for one? This would have been a good few weeks at least. Okay, so you knew this, and you're getting into an elevator with the person who just murdered your brother. While in this elevator, she's like, you shouldn't even be in school, you should be in prison, murderer. And so obviously Serena's like, well, okay, I'm gonna kill you now then. And she's like, oh no, please don't kill me. She goes to press the stop button, which is stupid because of an elevator right now. Don't press stop. You want the actual elevator to stop at the actual place that you're going to and get out. Not actually stop the elevator mid-travel. And when she reached in, she found her right hand was no longer attached to her wrist. Soon her pretty open scalp was no longer attached to her head, nor were her pierced and grey eyeballs attached to their sockets. So apparently, Cecily Vonskese has some kind of eyeball fetish, and she loves it when these people don't have their eyeballs anymore. There's like a lot of focus on eyeballs. Like, she leaves the body in this elevator. She's just killed her on this elevator. Does she think she's gonna get away with that? I mean, she does. Oh my god. It gets more ridiculous. It gets more ridiculous. I'm here for a fun time, don't get me wrong. I love anything ridiculous and camp and stuff like that, but like, this is like maybe a bit too much. And it also seems like everybody is a secret serial killer. Well, the entire class are like in this school and they're singing the hymns. Blair gets sick of the gossip that Nikki and the rest of the girls are talking about with Serena. So Nikki's just like one of the friends. Blair is behind her. She reached for Nikki's ponytail, pretending to remove a piece of lint from the shiny blonde strands. Then, with a sharp yank on the gold chain around Nikki's neck, she crushed the girl's windpipe before ramming the ridiculous crystal icicle pendant through her yellow Ralph Lauren turtleneck and into her jugular. So she doesn't just strangle her, but she also like stabs her in the neck, so that like there's gonna be blood everywhere. All the while Jenny knows that Nikki is lifeless and she is dead. Jenny thinks Serena did it because everyone thinks Serena is a serial killer. So like, if everyone thinks this, then why doesn't someone step in and do something about it? I do like there's subtle changes as well with the horror stuff. So instead of the kiss on the lips party, it's Kiss Me or Die. And Blair's favourite films are now like Rosemary's Baby and The Shining, rather than Breakfast at Tiffany's and like Some Like It Hot. And Dan still does his stupid kiss thing. You know how I hated it when he overhears Chuck and everyone gossiping about Serena and he hates it? So he stands up after eavesdropping and then goes mwah, 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 to the boys and then leaves is a, like a big screw you kind of gesture. He still does that. Like, that still happens the exact same way. And it just annoyed me. Like, it's just one little thing, but it annoys me so much. Vanessa is still here as well, and she just wants to film weird stuff. She wants to film dead bodies and things like that, which honestly isn't really all that different to her personality in the first 11 books. Vanessa isn't really that different. There's music blasting outside. I think someone's having a party. Like, how dare. Nikki's body is found, and this is what the school puts out. Due to an earlier incident, the auditorium will be closed for maintenance for the remainder of the day. Drama and dance classes will be relocated to the gymnasium. Thank you. That's it. They don't shut the school down. They found a body on the premises. Someone's just been murdered. They don't shut the school down. They just relocate where the classes are. The incompetence. And Blair says for every person Serena offed, she planned to off someone too. So now we have this competition between Blair and Serena to kill the most people. Which, honestly, I do like. That is actually kind of good storyline, but it's Cecily Bunsky's writing this, remember, so it's obviously not going to turn out good. Something that didn't happen in the original book as well is that Serena has a pajama party that Nate comes to, and, you know, other people were invited, but no one shows up, and so Nate comes, and they end up having sex, so I'm going to add this to this cheat encounter, even though it's like a different kind of timeline. I'm just adding it, because I just don't like Nate, okay? But then Katie and Isabel, who are, like, Blair's best friends, and are kind of there to be sort of her mole, they come along, they say that Nate's, you know, stuff's all over the place. Nate's in the shower, and then Serena's like, okay, I'm gonna have to kill you both now. So she pretends that she needs their help to get rid of the sheets. And she's like, could you help me get these sheets into the incinerator? You know where this is going, right? Like, can you be so dumb? So Katie and Isabel, they are excited about the prospect of, like, having some dirt on Serena. So like, oh yeah, sure, will help. Serena appeared with a bottle of absolute pepper vodka and a flaming tiki torch in her hands. She doused their hair and faces with the pepper-flavored vodka. Blinded, Katie and Isabel fell on their hands and knees, moaning. Serena tossed in the torch, and the two girls became a giant flaming flambe. Owie, it stings, Katie screeched. You're up in flames, and that's why you say, owie, it stings. And then Isabel says, you insane bitch. Serena grabs Isabel and throws her in the garbage chute. How she has the strength to do this, I do not know, because then she also grabs Katie and gets her to, well, drags her there after her too. I don't know how Serena had the strength to do that, but she does it, and so she's just offed two of Blair's best friends. Don't get me wrong, it's a good death scene. They were just dumb. They were just dumb for, like, believing Serena. They know she's a serial killer, and they're just like, oh, yeah, let's go to the incinerator with you, Serena. Like, if there was some more believability and people acted like actual people, I would have liked this more, but nobody's acting right. Blair's party, it's not the kiss me or die party yet, like, she's just hosting a different party. Whip my hair back and forth, I whip my hair back and forth by Willow Smith is on. It's oddly poetic because at the same time, Blair decides to kill Elise, who is Jenny's best friend. She says to Elise, I was just thinking how much I'd love to watch you die. And then she puts the ice pick into Elise's chest, and then she puts her head into the, what do you call it, the garbage disposal thing. She forced the girl's blonde head down the drain and flicked on the disposal. Its blaze began to grind, sending up sparks as they met bone. Chunks of flesh and bits of hair spattered the white kitchen ceiling. Just as Blair was feeding the girl's ankles and feet down the drain, so apparently she's been able to put the entire body of Elise into this, you know, the disposal thing. The middle of who came in. Blair, what a mess. Next time you want Bloody Marys, ask me to fix them for you. Okay, this is a horror comedy. This is genuinely a horror comedy, because, like, come on. At the same time, Dan wants to kill Chuck, and Jenny also wants to just kill someone. You know, everyone seems to just want to murder people in this. Dan sees Chuck in Barney's and follows him into a changing room and starts to strangle him with a tie. And then he does end up getting interrupted by the salesperson, and Dan runs away. So he's a bit shit at trying to kill people, isn't he? Blair and Serena are able to pick people up, put them in incinerators, and put them down garbage disposals, whereas Dan can't even strangle someone. Just to add to the random kill count as well, Blair goes for a waxing, which is, again, a scene that wasn't in the original book. I'll give it that. She goes for waxing, but it's not her usual person. So with the strength of a nationally ranked tennis player, she dunked his entire head into the pot of bubbling hot wax. So she's just killed him because he isn't her original wax person. Even though he offers to do it for her, she's like, no, die. Jenny confronts Serena. You're like a superhero. You're like Robin Hood. You're killing all the meanest girls so girls like me can have a chance. So while that's actually kind of like a good storyline, like killing all the mean girls of the school, Jenny has it totally wrong, and it's just like proof that she's probably just as more psychotic as Serena and Blair are. And Serena thinks for a second, should I kill Jenny? But then she's like, actually not. And then Blair comes up to Jenny and she's like, okay, let's go to the dark room. But Serena actually saves Jenny from Blair. Meanwhile, Vanessa's still trying to film her movie thing, you know, with Dan as the lead character. So this doesn't make sense. So she goes to a store to get a $4,500 knife to use as a prop for this film, but she doesn't have the money for it. So the salesman says, I'll tell you what, I'll let you have this one on loan if you bring it back safe and sound. No one's going to buy it anyway. Hunting's not real big in Manhattan. Who in their right mind as a salesperson would give a high school student a $4,500 knife as a prop for a movie and say, oh, just bring it back, it's a loan, just bring it back, fine? Who in the right mind would do that? And Serena, she still wants to audition for it, but she gets the idea from Miss Gloss, who is the college advisor person, who we did see in the very first book as well, but very briefly, and Serena decides to kill her too. She's like, here, have a tissue. She yanked out the entire wad of tissues, folded some paper, slid to the floor, she lunged across the desk and began to shove the tissues up the surprised college admissions advisor's nostrils, into her open mouth and down her throat. So she's managed to, shove tissues into her nostrils, put her whole hand in her nose, down the back of her throat and down her throat. Like, that is actually, like, really, really gross. Like, this isn't just, like, murder, this is, like, gore. This is like Saw level shit, you know? Like, this is really bad. Blair is following Nate because, again, they're supposed to be a couple, and she catches Nate at a pizzeria kissing another girl. He goes back inside while she goes outside. Her real name's Nancy, and Blair grabs the girl by the back of the head and rams the entire slice into her lipstick mouth. Yeah, have a bite. But not before Blair slit her throat with the round metal pizza slicer. Zing! Blood gushed from her neck, red and thick as tomato sauce. For good measure, Blair cut a big slash through the girl's slutty grey uniform skirt too. Nate says the whole thing, but he's just high. He's been having pot, so he doesn't really believe what's happened. And he's just anxious about Blair discovering that he's cheated again. Meanwhile, Vanessa, she's in a taxi and she passes and she tells the taxi driver to stop so that she can film the dead body. She's like, oh, maybe I can put this in my movie. Just to make Jenny and Dan really weird as well, they eat raw food. They're just eating raw food in their apartment.
You're a little nasty.
The author's like, okay, they haven't done anything too weird yet. Let's just make them eat raw food. Blair and Serena meet up and Blair tells her the same stuff she said in the first book. Do you have any pride? Leaves her. Serena's upset. And she runs into Chuck and Chuck takes her back to the suite. The whole thing happens where, like, she's, you know, losing consciousness and stuff like that. But when she wakes up, he's actually in her dress dancing to Madonna's Express Yourself. Maybe as a sort of nod to his, like, gay phase in the original books. And she, with her left hand, she clipped the eyelash curler over Chuck's right eyelid and pulled back hard. Chuck's bloody eyelid drooped from the eyelash curler. She opened the window and tossed it into the gutter. Within seconds, two well-fed baby vultures were fighting over it, squawking. So she's just ripped off his eyelid. And he definitely deserves it, don't get me wrong, he does in this book. But can you just imagine, like, how random that is, you know, an eyelash curler, getting it on his eyelid, and just like, oh, that really hurt. But Chuck isn't dead. The whole stuff with the Remy brothers as well, taking photos of Serena happens, she leaves. Blair comes in, absolutely jealous and foaming at the mouth. And again, I don't know how this happens, but she ends up killing the brothers. Blair unfurled the coil of wire and wrapped it tightly around both the Remy brothers' skinny necks. In her deft, perfectly manicured hands, the wire became a garrote, crushing their delicate windpipes and choking them in unison. How she has the strength to do this against two grown men, I do not know, because then also, Blair dragged them over to the far wall of the gallery and strung them up from the same nail on which Serena's portrait hung. She turned their dead heads to face each other, their twin bodies dangling. How does she have the strength to do that? It doesn't make sense, but I'm kind of living for it. Like, I both live for this book. This book is also making me die a slow death. Blair is in her apartment. She's like all up in the very high up, and she sees somebody who has blonde hair going to Central Park, and she assumes it's Serena, like, because like there's no other blonde people who live in New York, right? So she literally chases after this girl. The girl glanced behind her and started to run. They get all the way to the obelisk behind the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Blair swung the knife, holding it in both hands for extra head chopping power. The girl's head separated from her neck with a satisfying slicing sound. The head wasn't Serena's, but at least she'd had a good workout. It's hilarious, actually. But the fact that she chased just a random blonde girl, killed her, decapitated her, and she didn't even think to save her was actually Serena. In fact, she did this in public.